Hey, so I'm trying something a little bit different for this video. You may have tuned in last Friday to hear the piece that I'm about to discuss a little bit, a piece called Layover by the great and late Michael Hedges. And I want to talk a little bit about it, which is not kind of my usual thing on this channel, because I think it's a really important piece of music. I also think it's one of the great kind of acoustic guitar compositions of the late 20th century, and I want to talk a little bit about it and kind of why it ticks those boxes for me, and also talk a little bit about how it's played as well. A few people have been asking for kind of like some tutorials or tabs or things like that, and I don't really feel able to share the transcriptions that I've been doing for music that kind of is still in copyright, but I'm happy to talk a little bit through some of the approaches to playing it. So this piece for me sits in the same kind of vein as some other instrumental work that kind of came out around a similar time. Specifically the Bruce Cockburn piece Islands in a Black Sky, which is a big favourite of mine and one that I've been kind of working on for a long time. It's a little bit less discrete in its sections than that piece, but there still are some quite kind of distinct sections, and it moves through quite different emotional and kind of tone-wise journeys as the piece continues. It's a little bit of repetition as it goes through those sections a couple of times before kind of resolving at the end. I think one of the kind of really interesting things to look at first is actually the tuning. So there's a few pieces that once you tune into that tuning, suddenly you're just like, oh, okay, I'm in the headspace of this piece, and this is absolutely one of those. And that is because this piece revolves around this kind of release of tension through the chord, the C major chord, and that chord is also in the top 4 strings there. So we've got 2 C's there, we've got that E, and we've got that G there. So already in that tuning we have that nice clear major chord, but we introduce a little bit of tension with our bottom couple of strings there, and we've got our A and our D. Chord just in and of itself sounds like the piece of Layover. It's extraordinary how I don't know where that inspiration came first, whether Michael found this tuning and just thought there's something in that, or it kind of came out of the development of the piece. But when I hear that, when I tune into this tuning, and I immediately just okay, I'm in this headspace, that's great. And this piece does a similar thing as well. It moves between these kind of chromatic places, and so the opening we have this kind of very sparse harmonic series, but then we shift the root slightly and suddenly introduce a little bit of interest, and so you're kind of sitting in this one place, and then we introduce that note on the bass there, was that an F there? And suddenly there's a little bit of dissonance, a little bit of tension, and the whole piece is playing with that. So after that harmonic series, we start off this piece with that A root there, before moving into our next open string there, that D. Harmonics there, and this is the first time that we introduce that C, and this whole sequence as we slide up the neck, which is one of my just favourite passages in any piece of music. How good is that? And this whole sequence is based around that C note there. We've got that double in there, and then that whole way up, we're reintroducing that C and really keeping that in there before moving back to that D afterwards. motif. We work our way back to that C. And we strike that C major chord to finish that little run. Resolution in C, and the first note of that melody for the beginning is C, but then we recontextualize it again. So this whole piece is kind of playing hide and seek with that C major chord, both in that open strings there as we're reducing them, but also moving in and out of there and moving that root note until we're kind of, by the second time around, we're expecting that, we're waiting for that release intention. Something else I really like about this piece is the economical ability. There's a word in there somewhere, of the fingering. It's a pleasure to play. Like playing this sequence here, you could play it with that that first note with your second string, with your second finger, or with your third finger, depending on how you want to move your finger at the top. I like playing it with my second; it just feels a bit more comfortable. But it just means that I have to jump that second finger to a hammer on there. Whereas if you're playing with that third, so that's kind of a preference. And that brings in, I guess, I want to talk a little bit about why I think it's really valuable to study the music that you like and to look at people playing it on YouTube and to kind of get the introduction of it that way, to kind of figure out some of it by ear. But then I think there's a real value in figuring out how to play pieces like this from kind of whatever transcriptions you can find online, and then correcting and altering and changing them, both by listening to the recording but also by your preference. I know, for example, in that section that's on that D note, I finger that down on the second string there. But I also have seen videos of Hedges playing it. I think are correct or incorrect. He plays it one way, and that's, you know, the original way, but I really like the feeling, the way it kind of sits on my fingers there. So I think while you're figuring out a piece of music, find where it fits for you. Find where you like your fingers to sit, where you like those chords to kind of sit on the neck, and what sounds right for you, and play it that way. It doesn't matter if it's not the original way that it's played. It's the way that you want to play it, that you enjoy playing it. And with a piece like this, it's a real pleasure to just potter and practice and find where it sits in your fingers. For example, that sequence there, back when I was learning it, I would just play that for minutes and minutes at a time, and it's just got such a grace to it. And it's a real pleasure to find those pieces that both just sit on your fingers happily, but also are a real dream to play. And then, of course, at the end of the piece, that final release of tension with that chord there. So I think it's a beautiful piece of music. It's also a fascinating piece of music to study because it does really have that journey and that progression through it. I love instrumental guitar music, especially solo instrumental guitar music that has a really clear melody. This is just... there's this clear line, it's beautiful, it's original, but it also sits so nicely with your the accompaniment there. It's a little bit showy. There's some harmonics. There's a little bit of kind of like playfulness there, but it's also not his showiest piece of music. It's just nice. It's just a really, really nice composition. So I would really recommend sitting down, have a watch of the other video I put out and this video. Have a look at, there's a version where Hedges himself plays it really slowly. It's an old recording, there's a little bit of kind of like VCR damage, but it's absolutely worth watching the way that he plays it. Have a listen to those recordings, slow them down if you can, and just get your head around the piece of music, give it a go. And also, have a play around in the tuning. It's a real delight to play this tuning with this like beautiful open major chord, but there's really weird, dissonant other open strings there. So definitely have a play around with that. Might try and do this a little bit more for the pieces that I really like. Let me know if this is something that you enjoyed watching, that you found helpful, that you found interesting. Let me know, I guess, if you didn't and you don't want me to record these ever again. If that's the case, then I guess the truth is valuable to know. But yeah, thank you so much for sitting with me for a few minutes and talking through this fantastic little piece that I love, and have a lovely rest of your week.